Hey guys, welcome back to Mac Kiteboarding. Today I've got a comparison video for you in the Starboard lineup. So it's been a hot minute since we reviewed any Starboard boards. They make great boards, so we wanted to update it for this year, give you a quick versus on the Starboard Above versus the Starboard Takeoff, and also a quick discussion on some of their different constructions they have available. So yeah, let's get into it.
I love it. Yeah, it's the Starboards. I've had the opportunity to ride those quite a lot recently. Yeah. Shout out to the crew. Probably, I don't know. I know
representing the hat even.
I am. I got
bought and paid for by Starboard.
It is. Well, I was. They were kind enough to let me come down to South Africa. The crew down there was incredible. Got to ride a lot of the Starboards. Got to meet some of the designers and great people, great brand, and I did a few downwinders on their boards and on some of the inland lakes there. And anyways, I carried some of that thunder back here in Gusto for their boards and riding them here in our own conditions. And yeah, I think, I've been a windsurfer since '82. And,
before I was born. Yeah,
before you were born. I say that because, I've been into boards for a long time. Starboard's been around for a while. Yeah. When it comes to not only the wings here more recently, but they've been a part of the board making market for years.
Yeah. Windsurfing, even in SUP with the big SUP boom in the kind of late '90s, early 2000s. Right. We had them here at the shop as well.
Yeah. So not a new name in the market. Been around, tried and true. So yeah, I think giving a little comparison, a little breakdown of the two is kind of what we're looking to do here.
Yeah, these are two kind of everyman boards, I would say. Mm-hmm. Takeoff is kind of the legacy models, I would say. They've been making it for a few years, and it gets a little better. It changes a little bit every year. This year, it's a little narrower, a little longer, a little bit more of a recessed deck. Kind of that surfy board you and I have really been enjoying. And it's more of a good wind, kind of everyman, do-it-all kind of a board, or high performance even in the smaller sizes. And then the Above, we stretch that out a little bit, make it a bit more gunny. So I would say that one is really more aimed at, a point where you want more efficiency at takeoff. So whether that's light wind riding smaller foils, para-winging, that longer, sleeker shape can have some benefits there. Whereas in properly powered conditions, if you're winging in waves, having something, in the middle ground is good, but the Above takes it a little beyond that in terms of the extreme of the design. So
I would agree with that. I've spent most of my time on the Takeoff. I really like what they've done with the recessed deck where the foil track is. It's a little bit thinner.
Yeah, so closer to your feet.
So you feel very connected to the foil and the input and the feel of it. Yet, they distribute the volume into the nose. I think they've done that well to have a quite stable board.
It's balanced. They add volume in the tail as well, so it's not just the nose sticking out. There's added volume in the tail, and kind of the middle is scooped out where you're using it.
And it runs. Yeah. They ride smaller, but feel that the stability of a larger board. So right. I think it's a very nice blend. I think it's a board that anyone looking for a second board would love. I mean, for a lot of versatility. I do think, if you Takeoffs, like you said, they've gotten narrower, which gets them up. They get up to speed quicker. Another thing that I've noticed is their construction. I mean,
it's awesome. Cobra factory.
Yeah, I've not had many issues with, when I hit the board either with a handle or my hook or they seem to be a board that will take a beating.
Yeah, they're robust. They're also not overly heavy, so I think they balance that really nicely. Obviously, they've been making boards forever. Cobra Factory's been making boards forever. They know how to do it. And then you got the two price points, right, with the LS Limited Series and the Blue Carbon. And Blue Carbon is going to be a little lighter.
That's my favorite.
A little stiffer for somebody that wants to invest more and have a little bit higher performance board. And on the flip side, you've got the LS, which is an awesome price point board. I'm not upset to ride them at all. The blue carbon's a little nicer, but it's not a clear winner for me price-wise because it is so much more affordable in the LS. So if you don't need carbon, or if you're somebody that likes to neglect your boards a little bit more, the LS is going to be a bit more robust if you don't mind a little bit of a weight penalty. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of the white and black color scheme myself. I like the simplicity. It's sleek. It's sexy, even though it's a budget-oriented board.
Yeah, I have a 80-liter blue carbon in my car. Literally, I put it to the test. I've ridden it in light wind, powered up conditions.
Yeah.
And you know, you gave it to me, and it was an 80-liter, and I said, "That's too big. I want a smaller one."
Just try it, dude.
You said that. You said, "Give it a try." And I gave it a try, and I'm like, wow, it does not feel as big. I rode, when I was at the dealer meeting, I rode some of their smaller ones. And the 80-liter, I think, you know, very versatile.
Yeah.
Could use it in light wind.
And I think the key to that is, like you said, the thinner recessed deck, the cockpit area gets you closer to the foil. So that thickness, you're gaining leverage as you lower. You're gaining a lower center of gravity. It's almost like getting a shorter mast, but not paying the penalty with the breachiness. So it rolls and flows easier. It's wide enough where you can really leverage those bigger foils that you might be riding, but it's also not so wide that it's a barge.
Yeah, or not too
so
narrow.
they're really balancing those variables quite nice.
Yeah.
On the Takeoff for that surfy rider, I would say it's one of the better boards in the market if you want one board quiver. If you pick the right size, it'll do somewhat light to quite high, and without much compromise.
No, and you can point it and go, or you can choose to push it and surf it. And you don't feel like you said, the balance. It feels very balanced. You don't feel like you're gonna hit the nose in the wave or catch. It's just, you know.
On that point, I mean, it's a good freestyle board too. If you're a mixed style rider, and you know, hey, if the waves are good, I do that. If it's not, I'm doing
can do some
jumps and
with
stuff.
it.
It's a good size where it doesn't feel cumbersome, but it's also nimble enough.
And I think their team riders are really like that, the Takeoff that they've developed for that purpose. I saw some guys throwing down on that board.
Yeah, it's a favorite for sure.
Yeah, so definitely. So we've really been talking a little bit of Takeoff. The above, where do you see?
Yeah. Basically, you're taking the concept of the Takeoff and just taking it a little further. You know, so we're stretching it out, going a little narrower. Still has that sunken deck. The nose gets a little fatter and more bulbous.
Yep.
You know, to
More
really
pronounced.
to make use of that length and make sure that you're not spearing, you know, the nose. So it's still very beginner friendly and easy or user friendly. And even though it's narrower, I would say the bigger sizes are still, you know, a beginner friendly board. You know, it's a little narrower, but you gain a lot of stability from the board. You're gaining more length and efficiency. So yeah, if you're somebody in a light wind area, and a wide chicken nugget board isn't going to cut it for light wind days, you need that extra efficiency. I think, you know, it would be a suitable choice. But then on the other side, you know, we've been riding the 70-liter a lot for winging and para-winging.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting size because for me, it's almost a one-board quiver. You know, it's not going to ride sub 10, but from 10 up, it's pretty happy. It para-wings really well because it's so efficient and fast through the water. It's almost a hybrid of a wingboard and a downwind board. It's gaining a lot of downwind-esque properties without going so big.
Stretching the midi range a little bit.
But also keeping it stable for its width, I think, is a key point for the above, because a lot of times these narrower boards get harder to ride the narrower they get.
They do. I think that's a little trade-off between the Takeoff and the above. The above maybe seem a little bit more, but I do.
Yeah, it's quite a bit narrower. So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You might size up in the above if you're not an experienced rider. Would be my suggestion. Just get a little bit more width. The extra length is going to help you in terms of, you know, your ease of use, your low end ability. But yeah, on something like the 70 for us, you know, that's a great do-it-all wingboard. For me as a para-winger, I find that's a great utility.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to learn on that board necessarily, but it's a board that now, you know, if you're in good conditions, it's going to work really well for you. And then I would also throw out there, like, you know, again, as a one-board quiver, foil drive, prone. It's a really capable board for both of those disciplines. So it's just deciding, you know, are you more of a dedicated wing guy in the waves, you know, the Takeoff is probably the option.
I'd agree with
If
that.
you want some light wind performance, some para-wing performance, you know, the
Steer
Above
Torque.
is probably the better option
Yeah.
there. My only dig at the Above would be in the 70-liter size. It's a little narrow.
I'd agree.
It's redeeming because the deck stance area is thinner, so you get good leverage over the foil. But on wider foils, like we're sometimes para-winging with, I think I would like a little bit more stance
estate,
area
so you can
to really lay into a turn.
leverage.
So that's a small nitpick for me personally, but you know, a lot of people on the 70 aren't going to be riding foils that spanny either. So I think it's a happy medium.
Yeah, I think going back to who these boards are for, we've done a nice job of kind of outlining their characteristics. But I definitely think, you know, someone who's looking for a second board, either of these boards could work, especially the Takeoff. I think with this little added width, it just gives you that real sense of security and balance when you're switching feet and you're doing your tacks and your jives and moving your feet around the board. You can kind of misstep a little bit, and it's forgiving.
Yeah.
Which I think is really nice, and yet it has that higher performance when you want to push it in the waves. So, you know, it's a solid board for a wide variety of what you can do on the water with it.
I agree. Good boards, both of them. You know, Takeoff's more of your dedicated wing wave freestyle board. The Above is that board when you're looking for that extra efficiency on the water, whether you're riding a smaller foil. Maybe you're recreational racing, great board for that. In the bigger sizes, light wind, you know, and everything in between para-winging and winging as well. So these are versatile boards.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just choosing which flavor you want.
Yeah. Like I said, I've got one in my car. I've been putting it through the ropes. I think I'm gonna keep it for a little longer. And I've got a few local guys that are like, "Hey, what's that blue board you're riding?"
Yeah, don't be scared to size up on these. Is my 2 cents too.
I'm
With
on
that
the 80.
sunken deck, it feels smaller than it really is, and having a bit more board under your feet is underrated, I feel like. So
Totally agree, especially if you're going to try to do some cross disciplines.
Yep.
Which I've been starting to do with more para-winging.
Yeah, buddy.
You know, it's not the race to just going small, you know, having a little bit of that extra volume, and it just gives you that security to pop up. And with the shape and designs of both of these boards, you know, you're not sacrificing when you add leaders. It's really more about the dimensions that we've talked about that add the performance, and don't get hung up on just the leaders.
Yeah, especially on these, because
for
there
sure.
is so much scooped out of them.
Which is true of anything in the midi range, where we starts to stretch from the midi to the downwind size, you know, in that arena.
Yeah, it almost separates the variables more, right? Like, rather than being in here, in good wind, you can go way over here, and in junky wind, you can go way over here. Right, so you're almost expanding it more. And if you're going to do a 2-board quiver, you know, rather than having a 60 and a 90, you might have a 50 and a 110. You know, just depending on what you want to do with it, and really, you know, broaden that total range.
A lot of choices, so I think we covered it quite well.
Yeah.
2 boards that we're excited about. You know, anything I have in my car for more than a week or two, and I ride it and I keep it, you know, it says something about the board.
Yeah, you hole up all the best stuff.
Yeah, I get the good gear. So, yeah, if you're curious more about have further questions, feel free to hit us up with a chat, give us a phone call, send us an email. We'd be happy to.
Jump on the website, check out the
Yeah.
sizing, check out the pricing, and
we have stock, and
currently, we'll see how many people buy them up.
Yeah,
But
see what
we have
happens.
a couple of different years in stock, some closeout, some in line. So check it out and what fits best for you.
Right on, man. It's been Jeff at Matt Kite.
And Tucker,
Enjoy the stoke.
see you next time.